What is up, ladies and gents? Noli here, and welcome back to another Prophecy meta video. Today the focus is going to be on traits, synergies, counter traits, traits that really don't do well together. All these things are going to be explored in this video. I think it makes a lot more sense than doing a tier list, because comparing all 40 traits with one another is a bit of a futile thing to do. Yes, some are generally more powerful than others, but everything should be taken on a case-by-case basis in Prophecy, because, as we know, you only have 16 available traits in the game, so you have to consider how the traits are ranked in that game alone. It's its own little microcosm, and I think the best way of doing that is understanding how traits interact and what is worthwhile with each other. If you get a better understanding of that, you will just be able to look at the right of your screen when you're loading in and say, yes, I want this, this, and this, or a lot of opponents are going to be rushing this, I should go for this particular setup. That's what it's all about, not saying, oh, I should always rush silence, because that kind of play style is what is going to get you many a loss, and you're much better being as adaptable as possible, but also just having a greater understanding of things. So that's what this video is all about. I hope you enjoy. I will catch you at the end. So sit back, relax, and I'll see you soon. Traits, items, and units all interact with each other in different ways. For example, a character without a damaging ability will get very little out of something like Void beyond holding a copy of the trait for their leader, whereas one with a wide AoE that reapplies repeatedly will maximize the effectiveness of the trait, extending the anti-heal duration. There are also some traits and items which interact in interesting and sometimes very powerful ways. This video will look at the mechanics of these interactions and point out the most powerful synergies you should be on the lookout for when building a set of traits for your leader and composition. To start things off, I'm going to break down positive trait interactions into three categories: basic attack synergies, magical damage synergies, and defensive synergies. I'm assuming you know what most of these traits do, but I will go into more detail about their more complex combinations. Let's start things off by discussing how to build comps centered on basic attacks and physical damage. While this works across all leaders, Susanoo, Loki, and Thanatos have passives and playstyles which work best with on-hit auto attacks, and the units you're generally going to be looking for are hunters and assassins. Starting things off with haste, agility, and judgment, these traits are your quintessential in-hander skills, boosting your attack speed, attack damage, and effective attack targets, allowing you to turn single-target basic attacks into multi-target hits. All of these have basic synergy with on-hit effect traits and physical damage traits, such as Aether, Ice, Thunder, Blood, Arcane, Force, Resourceful, Fire, Disarm, Demon, Luck, and Poison. However, I'd say Agility is particularly good with burst damage traits like Force and Fire, as well as Blood, which can be massively augmented by the multi-hit effect, whereas Judgment is great with crowd control, such as Ice and Disarm, or something like Thunder, which can give you a Soul Cleaver effect on all your hunters or assassins. And finally, Haste is more so the jack of all traits, working well with everything and anything, and as a result you'll find this to be an incredibly highly contested trait. Now considering damage augments, we have Arcane plus Blood or Fire. This should not be a massive surprise, as the true damage Arcane applies scales off of your total physical damage. Both of these traits increase this, either immediately by a percentage value as in Fire, or over time as with Blood. Similarly, and this is very self-explanatory, we have Luck and Force, increasing both physical crit chance and critical damage. Next, let's discuss a slightly more obscure basic attack synergy, Thunder combined with Astral or Intelligence, which is something that wouldn't normally spring to mind, considering we'd usually put those magical skills on ability dealing characters, whereas Thunder is placed on attack speed orientated units, which don't tend to have damaging abilities. However, Thunder deals magical damage, which is augmented by Astral and Intelligence, turning a base 20% health scaling attack into one that can deal 88% of an enemy unit's health as magical damage. It's rare you'll get a setup with 2 Astral, 2 Thunder, and 6 Intelligence on your leader, but if you can, prepare to be amazed. This is a very basic set of synergies to consider. All you're trying to do is leverage characters with lingering or widespread AoE damaging abilities and getting them to cast more often or with greater potency. Poseidon and Zeus are the poster children of this playstyle, but characters like Bellona and Athena can be just as good when played correctly. Mages almost all have damaging abilities, so should be your primary damage dealer for these synergies, although assassins like Pele and Kali, or even fighters like Camazotz can be just as potent. Starting things off, we have the mana traits of Resourceful, Spirit and Wisdom, being best suited to casting abilities augmented by Void, Astral, Silence and Intelligence, or even more frequently proccing Devotion. It's worth noting that Wisdom is generally considered the weakest of these three skills, as it will only help for the first cast. However, in lobbies without much defense and tankiness, this is often all you need. And when it comes to applying anti-heal through Void or a Silence, which notoriously counters opposing builds, mana is the best trait to win this race and often secure victories in the late game. Next up, we have the ever popular Clarity. This has always felt like a bit of a leader dependent skill, but it needn't be if you pair it with characters packing Astral, Devotion, Void or Intelligence, increasing the potency of the double cast, frequency of Devotion heals, or sustained duration of anti-heal, so watch out for these. Finally, we have another more obscure consideration, that being Sanctuary plus Resourceful or Spirit. As damage dealt to health shields does not go towards filling your mana pool, they are best paired with additional mana gaining skills so that your rate of cast is not reduced by this additional tankiness. This is maybe the least obvious set of synergies for new players, but it is probably the most contested playstyle at higher tournament level play. What it's all about is either combining skills to make you virtually unkillable, with percentage damage and executes from the likes of Geb and King Arthur, or using skills which augment your damage based off your current health or tankiness. You should go for this whenever possible, just remember that these skills are often highly contested, and in particular, Odin appreciates extra damage when built with defense, and characters like Centurion will increase that damage team-wide with his ability. Defensive synergy comes from two primary trees, health and protections. Alternative forms of tanking up include evasion, block, perception, or even earth to some extent, but these are generally counter traits or are best built as your only form of defense, as they tend to overlap or clash with each other. Health setups are based around the trait Endurance, which augments the effectiveness of Molten, Sanctuary, Wild, and Devotion. Probably the most potent combo in the game being Molten/Endurance, simply boosting the damage of all units as their health increases, making it universally desirable and coming with the benefit of being both defensive and offensively strong. For protections, the skill Metallic is often the focal point. This increases your damage based on your respective defenses, so if you are more physically defensive, you will hit harder with physical attacks. Generally, Metallic Resolve is the most sought after, owing to the fact that magical damage is somewhat meta right now. Keep in mind, although Metallic is the all-important skill, you're generally much better off with points in defense, resolve or isolation if you can't find the Metallic, than vice versa, as I have lost many games just hanging on to Metallic without enough protections to truly get something out of this trait. A final slightly unique synergy option for you to consider is Crowd Control. I think crowd control is probably the deciding factor in most rounds, so paying more attention to this is worthwhile. Opportunist increases the damage you deal to crowd control opponents, meaning that traits which apply CC, such as Silence, Ice, Earth or Disarm, get the most out of this skill. Opportunist is also a preferred pickup when playing leaders with their own forms of CC, such as Poseidon or Susanoo. Now, it's not worth going into matches and just chasing after the powerful synergies I've shown you here. It's just as important that you, first of all, take what you can get in the early game, and that you understand the counters to your setups. In the next section, I'm going to bring you through some of the more distinct counter traits. First up, we have Earth, a criminally underpurchased trait in my opinion. This will hard counter any in-hand setup you may face, shutting down the universally picked up haste trait. When struggling with crowd control effects I just mentioned, such as Silence, Stun, Disarm or Knockup, Elite should be picked up, hard countering some leaders and often leading to CC comps beating themselves. I'd go as far to say that I will often drop the ever powerful Silence on a character like Zeus whenever I come across a strong elite composition. Aether counters Perception, as well as most mana orientated builds, by preventing casting and removing the mitigation Perception offers. Conversely though, Perception is a better pickup when paired with a Silence lobby, as characters will often be stuck at max stacks of damage reduction as they can't cast away their mana. To a lesser degree than the previous examples, Force and Astral go some way to counter block builds. This is because block excels at reducing low impact but rapidly occurring damage, whereas Force and Astral are built on the idea of burst damage, something that flat block does relatively little against. Thunder is a natural counter to Endurance as its damage scales off enemy health, and it's also very good at going around defense, which would normally nullify the basic attack builds that Thunder augments so well. Luck claims to counter Evasion, stating in the tooltip that characters with Luck cannot be evaded. However, right now this doesn't seem to be working 100% of the time. On the less subtle side, we have Void and Poison, probably the most obvious counter traits, aiming to reduce the healing which Wild, Devotion and Demon offer. Similarly, Disarm is obviously designed to counter in-hand and on-hit effect setups. Evasion has a similar counter purpose, but of course to a lesser degree, as the faster a composition basic attacks, the more frequently attacks will get through the evasion on average. Where I do love Evasion is when countering Resourceful. This is because it counters both incoming physical damage and the opponent's ability to get their magical casts off, which naturally Evasion does nothing against. For the final section, I thought I'd give you some traits which don't go well at all together. That isn't to say that they are necessarily ruining your chances of winning, or that they do nothing when paired up, just that they are not at their maximum effectiveness when used alongside each other and would be better suited to other secondary traits. First up, we have a couple of Sanctuary combos. I think, although it is a good trait, Sanctuary is probably the biggest noob trap in the game. For example, many people don't know that the health it gives is removed without mitigations being taken into account, meaning that defense and resolve will not help you particularly, at least while your Sanctuary shields are active. As mentioned previously, damage inflicted on the shield also isn't converted into mana, meaning that a trait like Wisdom is a little wasted, as you will often reach mana threshold at the same time as an opponent without Wisdom, but gaining mana from your damaging attacks. Evasion and Earth may seem like a good combo to achieve total shutout against Hunter or Assassin comps, but it does absolutely nothing against magical damage and reduces the likelihood of getting Earth stuns, as you actually have to be hit in order to proc that effect. Block and Perception seem like a cool full mitigation approach, but was always a powerful concept that the devs squashed before the game was even accessible, as Block will always apply first, meaning Perception is reducing a lower number, and so is individually less potent. Finally, crowd control traits such as Ice, Aether, and Disarm are well suited to control playstyles that have slow kill times. If you build this with burst traits such as Force, you're building kinda counterproductively. Force setup should aim to take out units so rapidly that CC is a waste of time and potential one-shot capability. Keep an eye out on opponents making the mistake of building these traits together and focus less on countering them in the late game, as they will likely not be as potent as your other opposition. So that does it for this video. You guys might notice I'm in yet another slightly different recording location, so I hope the sound quality wasn't too bad. It's not ideal, but I'm doing my best with what I have right now. In terms of this video, I desperately hope you learned something from it. It was a little bit more effort than just putting together a tier list, but I do think it was necessary when talking about traits. They are pretty damn complex, and I think I've learnt a bit over the process of making this video in terms of understanding. Thank you to the community. They were very helpful with a few queries I put into the general chat of the Discord, because like I say, there are lots of things that I'm still learning with Prophecy. But moving into the rest of this week, I've got a tournament video coming up for you guys. I did pretty well in last weekend's practice tourney, so I want to give you guys some ideas as I head into this Friday and Saturday tournament, how I prepare, some ideas I have going into them. So hopefully you'll stick around for that video. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm really looking forward to these tournaments. So stay tuned, and I will see you all very soon.